we have created a system now where criminals are released early from jail, and we have homicides on the street escalating in a way that we haven't seen since the Miami Vice days of the early '80s. And as a result, we now have drug crime. We have uh, murders the murder rates are increasing dramatically, and it's largely because we have a drug war going on in our country, and it's fueled by the cartels from the South, who Joe Biden has opened the doors of our border to come in, send their soldiers to the streets of our cities, the small, medium, and large cities, and to take over those streets, to dominate the criminal enterprises in those streets. And they don't care who they kill and what they have to do to control that territory. So that's what our real criminal situation is. Our real criminal situation is that we have drugs flowing into our country at a rate that is unprecedented. We have opioid deaths up by 30,000 people this past year. 30,000 people. More people died of opioids addiction and overdoses than did in the prior year. Under President Trump, that number had been lowered to 70,000. We were heading in the right direction because we cracked down on the border, because we were cracking down on fentanyl in particular. And we were pressuring the Chinese not to ship it, and we were holding them accountable. But now it's kitty bar the door, and fentanyl is basically being stripped into a lot of different drugs, and our children and adult addicts are paying the price, and they're dying on the streets. And that's the reality of Joe Biden's open border. So when he sits there and he wants to talk about a culture of death, I want to just say to him, you are the culture of the death. You are the embodiment of the culture of death, because it's your policies that have caused a drug war in this country, a war against Americans on our own streets. And you can't walk away from that by sitting there and trying to ban guns. Banning a gun of a cartel member doesn't do any good. It doesn't stop that cartel member from having a gun. It stops anybody who might want to protect their own household from having a gun, but it doesn't stop that cartel member from having a gun. What's more, your vice president, Kamala Harris, supported an actual law, supported letting people out on bail without bail. They're basically, you get arrested, you get turned back onto the street before the officer gets a report. And if you think that's being kind of apocryphal and not really true, that's what the sheriff of LA County says happens on a regular basis. So let's just be clear. That is the reality. That is the reality of the Biden policies. It's prosecutors supported by Biden allies, George Soros, who sit there and don't prosecute violent crimes, don't prosecute property crimes, who basically say, we're going to give you a free pass to commit crime in America in our jurisdiction, and then expect that you're going to have crime go down. No, you let people out who commit crimes. You don't punish them. You don't protect society from them. And guess what you get? You get more crimes. That's what you get. So you have prosecutors who won't prosecute. You have mayors who don't believe that people should be that people should be found guilty for property crimes. Property crime, in California, they've made a law so you basically can steal up to $1,000 at a single sitting, and it's a misdemeanor. It's no longer it's basically a fine. By the way, the fine's less than the dollar amount of what you stole. And there's no instances of misdemeanors, no reason to keep you in jail. And so we have roving gangs going through California, breaking into shops, high-end and mid-size, and places like CVS's, drugstores, and stealing stuff with impunity because there's no penalty. Because it's okay, it's been approved. Because after all, remember the catchphrase of Antifa, if we burn it down, it's okay. Because after all, the insurance companies will pay you back. So that's the reality of the Biden criminal justice system. It's one that focuses on going after people who have flags flying in their front yard and protecting those who burn them on the streets of America. So when Joe Biden wants to talk about a culture of death, I say to President Biden, sir, look in the mirror. You embody that culture of death. Let's talk a little bit about specific gun control laws that are being proposed. Matthew McConaughey, who I'm writing a piece on, I'm struggling to remember how to spell his name, and I keep spelling it a different way. But Matthew McConaughey, who has been in many movies, but I prefer to just refer to him as the dazed and confused actor, since that was one of his first roles. The dazed and confused Matthew McConaughey is wandering around the Senate with a lot of photographers today, getting pictures of people like Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Dick Durbin and others, talking about reasonable gun control, that we can sacrifice the Second Amendment for reasonable gun laws. Well, his reasonable gun laws, the two proposals they've been talking about, I'll spend a little time on the first one, I'll spend a lot of time on the second. First proposal he's been talking about is, we just need to make it so 18-year-olds can't buy rifles or shotguns. Well, I'm sorry, but if 18-year-olds are old enough to go get shot and killed for our country in the military, then they're old enough to be able to buy a rifle. Okay, very simple. If we're going to send kids overseas, call them men, send them to boot camp for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and bulk them up, and then send them out to fight our nation's battles for freedom, we darn well better be willing to let them be able to purchase a firearm when they're back home, purchase a rifle or shotgun when they're back home. So first of all, that's just basic on the 18-year-old issue. If Congress wanted to do something, and of course Matthew McConaughey hasn't thought about this that much, I've thought about it a lot. If they actually wanted to do something, well, make the juvenile justice records available for the NCIC, for the background check. Make those available for the background check for the first 3 years until they're 21. And that way, if somebody shouldn't be getting a gun and they're 18 and there's no adult record, at least there's a capacity to check and see if there's a reason they shouldn't because of crimes they've committed in the past. And that would be a reason that, you want to talk reasonable? That's just common sense. And but let's see, we'll see what the left says why they can't do that, because quite honestly, if you want to do something about it, people are 18, let's be honest, you should not discriminate against kids. But if there's a reason why they shouldn't get a gun, I don't think anybody really wants them to be able to. Now let's talk red flag laws, which is the other bonehead idea that McConaughey has. Last week, there was a trial 10 days ago. There was a trial held across the street from my office, featuring a guy named Johnny Depp and his former spouse, Amber Heard. And that trial was all about a spouse publicly saying that their husband was committing domestic abuse against them, and that accusation was false. In a red flag world, that accusation has to be taken as absolutely the truth. And the police officer might come, in this case, a police officer did come in one occasion, to the household, has a responsibility to remove any firearms from the household. Doesn't matter if it's true, doesn't matter, none of that matters. There's no innocent until proven guilty. The presumption is you're guilty. And it doesn't matter if you're a male being accused by a female, or if you're female being accused by a male. So let's just take it from the feminist perspective. If you're sitting there and you're a female and you're being stalked by your former boyfriend or something, okay? And you go off and you say to the police, and that former boyfriend, you get your restraining order, you do all that stuff. Your former boyfriend accuses you of threatening their life, saying you've got a gun and you're threatening their life. The police, under the red flag laws, are coming to your house and they're taking away your means of protection. And let's just be honest, that's what they're doing. That's what the red flag law does. And you have nothing to say about it. You can't defend yourself. We already have a case, at least one case in Maryland, where they have red flag laws, where a gentleman was awakened at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning by a bunch of cops coming to take away his guns. And these people, and he, tried to defend his household and ended up being killed. This is serious business. And when you start giving an accusation the weight of a conviction, and you don't have a judicial system that actually will allow for somebody to defend themselves, then there is no, essentially you are asking, you've ended the right. You've ended the right to keep and bear arms, because the presumption is you're guilty and they take your stuff. So those are, red flag laws are extremely dangerous. And, oh, by the way, for Matthew McConaughey, who's pretty well known for the consumption of illegal substances, as part of his coolness, he might think twice, because the consumption of those very substances are a disqualifier. And as a result, his very public attitude towards consuming illegal herbs creates a presumption on him that he's ineligible to own a firearm or possess a firearm, because it's against the law. So before Mr. McConaughey gets too far engrossed in trying to determine what you and I should be able to do, perhaps he should look in the mirror and think about the ramifications of what he's proposing to Congress on his own life. Because, folks, it gets black and white once it's in law. It's no longer wiggle room. There's not discretion. If a cop is told you have to confiscate the gun, the cop has to confiscate the gun. They have to, whether it's, no matter what they see right there, because if that gun were later to be used in the commission of a crime or in some kind of way that was, in any way, that cop would be liable. The cop would be fired if they didn't confiscate that gun. So guess what? Every single way of the law will be towards gun confiscation. I've seen it in places like New Jersey where I was a lobbyist and we had just crazy stuff going on. And the fact is, they put this into federal law, and there'll be a fight in court, because it will allow for some illegal seizures of legally owned, constitutionally protected property. But let's just make sure the Senate doesn't do something stupid. If you go down to the comments below, there's a take action. I'd encourage you to take action on this and contact the Senate and the House and just tell them to not vote for gun bans, not vote for any more of this gun junk. I have to tell you, it's heartbreaking, but I'm not going to go down that path. Seeing how Republicans are cowering in this situation. Ted Cruz accepted. Ted Cruz went to the NRA convention and spoke. Donald Trump went to the NRA convention in Houston and spoke. But seeing how the Mitch McConnell Republicans in the Senate are cowering on this issue, because all they wanted was a nice election where nobody was paying any attention. Everybody was just going to vote against the other guys without the Republicans having to say anything and do anything to earn their vote. Well, now that's been all thrown upside down. And those same Republicans are now basically hiding in a corner with their thumbs in their mouths, hoping that nobody will say anything bad about them or force them to do anything. Well, the time when you prove who you are is when times are tough. And if those Republicans are not willing to stand up and fight for the rights of Americans, it's just the same as if they were the ones trying to take it away. Because the last thing because I'll use an old term, they're effectively a Maginot Line against gun confiscation. And that is a cowering politician is the most pathetic sight to see. So it's up to, if they're going to cower, let's have them cower under the weight of hundreds of thousands of emails telling them to stand up and fight. they're going to cower. Let's have them cower, not to a Hollywood celebrity visiting their office, but to their constituents who are saying no, not only no, but hell no. It's time we stand up and we hold those politicians accountable and force them to understand that they work for you. And when they work for you, if they don't hear from you, they forget. So use the link, spread the word around. Let's create an avalanche in Capitol Hill. The Senate's in session for the next 3 weeks. The Constitution's in danger. And truthfully, your contacting your senator may be the only thing that gets between them and running for the door, seeking a solution to do something that neither solves the problem nor protects your freedoms.